order. We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda, please?
I'll move.
Adele and Walt, thank you. All in favor? And received, great, and that's carried, thank you. We are going into consent agenda now. Was there anything from the consent agenda that anyone wished to pull and discuss? There was the adoption of last minutes and the circulation stats. Anything to pull? Then may I have a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda, please, to adopt the consent agenda. Paul and someone else and Sis, great.
Yeah.
All in favor? That is carried. Wonderful. Thank you. So next we've got our regular financial report before we go into the scintillating financial report. Do you want to talk us through our regular financial report?
Sure, I actually don't have much to highlight. Everything is on track at this point in the year. I guess it's more if anyone has questions. There's
Any questions?
nothing off track.
We keep looking over here. No questions? All right, then could I please have a mover and a seconder to accept the financial report as presented? Jackie and Lisa, thank you. Favor? All in favor on the screen, anyone? Seems so good, great, that's carried. You never know if someone's not. And so next up, I would like to introduce Oscar Poloni from KPMG, who is here to give us our audit report for this year. You're very welcome here in Haliburton. It's great to see you. And I pass the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be here today. I will confess, I have never been to Haliburton before.
Oh,
Because I normally come this way for county, but I turn right to go to Minden.
Yeah.
I was commenting to my partner this morning about how lovely this town must be when it warms up. I discovered your local coffee shops and discovered your local restaurants. It really is a fantastic community. So I was down this morning for county, so I wanted to stay the afternoon to meet with the library as well. So thank you. The purpose of our presentation today is to present the financial statements for the library board for the 2025 fiscal year. So consistent with what we've done in the past, we've prepared a bit of a presentation to walk through the salient points of the financial statements. I do want to encourage you to ask questions as we go. I'm not particularly high on formalities, Madam Chair. The other thing is, this is the only thing I have to do today other than go home. So I have lots of time. Please don't feel like you're monopolizing it. So next slide, please. So just in terms of the audit and some of the highlights from an auditing perspective, we execute our audit in accordance with Canadian auditing standards. And these are the rules that govern how auditors undertake this type of work. It outlines all sorts of procedures that are required. What you will see when you read the audit opinion is it says that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. And what materiality is the threshold of errors that as auditors we're able to absorb before we either have to have them corrected or we change our audit opinion. So we don't say your financial statements are accurate because we would have to audit every transaction. And clearly we don't mean that. So in the private sector, when you look at materiality, it's typically based on net income. Because for-profit organizations are motivated by profit. In the public sector, including the library, where you don't have a motivation from a profit perspective, we typically look at either revenues or expenses. So we've based our materiality on revenues, and it's 3% of the prior year's revenues, and that gives us a materiality of $40,500. Now, as auditors, and I will apologize to the people on this call and in the meeting who heard this 6 hours ago, but as auditors, we use materiality for a number of different purposes. For example, when we pick samples, we feed it into our processes to determine our sample sizes. But what I would suggest for members of the board, the most relevant use of materiality is it drives what's known as our posting threshold. And this is the level above which, if we have an error that's uncorrected, we need to tell you about it today. So that is 5% of materiality, or $2,000. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is effectively the level of precision that we have from an audit perspective. And I am very happy to report that we have no uncorrected differences above our posting threshold. So we haven't had to eat into our materiality. So our audit is complete. Our audit was actually done 4 weeks ago. We were waiting on the county to move the meeting forward. And so we are prepared to issue what's known as an unqualified audit opinion. This is the highest level of assurance that you can get under Canadian auditing standards. And there's two things we need. One is we need the board to approve the financial statements today. The second thing we need is we need to obtain what's known as a management representation letter, which is an attestation from staff, basically saying they've told us everything. I already have your statements in my inbox. So I'm just waiting for this meeting to be able to finalize everything. No issues that we've had to identify from an audit perspective that require disclosure to the board. As I've mentioned, there's no differences above our posting threshold, no issues around internal controls, no limitations on our work or differences with management. We had a good conversation with Andrea about your financial statements and your reserve position as part of prepping for this meeting. So the audit has gone well, and we're appreciative of the support provided to us, not only by Andrea, but also by the staff at the county as well. This audit has gone very well. So next slide, please. In terms of the financial statements themselves, the first financial statement is your statement of financial position, and this is a summary of your assets and liabilities at year end. Now, as we've discussed in the past, when it comes to what we call your treasury function, management of your cash balances, your reserve balances, there's a very high degree of integration between the library and the county. So rather than you maintaining your own bank balances, the county does that for you on your behalf. So what you will find is there's what's known as a due from the county of Haliburton. This is basically your money that they're holding on your behalf. And so this is something that we see in a number of different municipal library boards, where rather than maintaining their cash function independent, it's integrated with their parent municipality, for lack of a better term. What you will find is that on an overall basis, the amount that's due from the county of Haliburton, basically your net resources, have gone up from about $465,000 to $515,000. So that's an increase of about $50,000. And the reason for that is because you had a surplus this year. What you'll also find from a assets perspective is your tangible capital assets represent the investment that the library has made in your infrastructure. So you don't own the building, but your collections, your furniture, your computer equipment, and the like. So what happens is when you have a long-lived asset, you don't expense it right away. You put it on the books as tangible capital assets, and you write it off over the useful life. So during the year, your investment in tangible capital assets, which is at the bottom, has gone down by about $38,000. So you purchased about $83,000 in capital this year, brings this number up. But the amortization expense, or writing it off over the useful life, was about $121,000, which brings this number down. So in terms of where you've invested your money, there was about $64,000 in collection materials. This is the stuff that's on the other side of that wall. In addition, there was about $19,000 of computers that were purchased during the year. So next slide, please. So the second statement is your statement of operations, and this is a summary of your revenues and your expenses for the year. So your total revenues have gone up by about 1%. So they've moved from 1.35 million to $1.36 million. That's an increase of about $14,000. Overall, about 89% of your total revenue actually comes from the county contribution at $1,218,000. Last year it was about 90%. That's fairly consistent. And we understand going forward, there's been some adjustments that have been made to that. So what you'll find is that your operating expenses over the same time have gone up by about $90,000. So that's about 7%. Part of that is higher wages and benefits. And the reality is last year you were experiencing what we call capping, where you had positions that were budgeted but not filled. As you've started to fill those positions, your salary costs start to rise towards a more normalized level. Other than that, your operating expense is generally consistent on a year-over-year basis. And what you will find is this, is if I take your total revenues and I subtract your total expenses, I end up with a surplus for financial reporting purposes of $22,000. Now, I want to caution members of the board that there is a difference between how you budget and how your financial statements are prepared. So as I've mentioned, there's the concept of amortization expense where you're writing off your assets over time. You don't budget that way. When you buy capital, you expense it in year. And so what you need to recognize is that surplus isn't actually your true surplus from a budgeting perspective, because you still have to pay for capital out of it, and you also have to pay for any reserve transfers out of it. So I know it may seem a little weird for your auditor to say, don't rely on that number, but don't rely on that number. Okay. The number that you should rely on, we'll see in a couple of slides. So just to the next slide, please. So just for the information of the board, we wanted to provide you with a bit of historical perspective, as you will. And this is a summary of your revenue in the light blue bar from 2016 to 2025. The reason why we went back to 2016 is because we started being your auditors in 2017. So that's as far back as we could go with the information. The red bar, the red line at the bottom is actually your surplus. What you will see is outside of a bit of a spike in 2020, and as you will remember, 2020 was a weird year. You're generally operated very close to breakeven. And the nice part about this slide, what it shows is that from a surplus perspective, you have always stayed on the right side of positive. So it's not a case where you have operating losses from a financial perspective that would call into question the stability and the long-term sustainability from a financial perspective. Now, once again, this reflects your revenue and your surplus as per your financial statements. And there's differences between that and how you budget. So if you go to the next slide, what you'll find is this is the reconciliation. And so we had this up last year, excuse me, if you were present last year. So just to explain it, and I am going to focus on the far right-hand column, if you will, which is 2025. As you've seen the financial statements, you have a $22,000 surplus. There's $1,364,000 of revenue, $1,342,000 of expenses. Now, inside that revenue, inside those expenses and inside of that surplus is a deduction for $121,000 of amortization. As I've mentioned, you don't actually budget for that. You budget for when you spend the expenses, the capital. So what we do is we add back the amortization expense, we deduct the capital, and what you find out is that your true surplus in terms of how you budget is $60,000. And once again, what you'll notice is if you go back historically, you can see that absent 2024, where you actually had a bit of a loss, you've generally stayed on the right side of positive. And it's not like you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, because my comment would be to you, if you had significantly large deficits or ongoing deficits, I would suggest you need to right-size your organization where you're spending more than you're taking in. So that's either you fix your revenue or you fix your expenses. If, however, you're generating large surpluses to the tune of $100,000 to $200,000 a year, then what I would suggest to you is you're not using your resources well, because rather than taking that money and investing it in community programming, what you're actually doing is you're holding it in the bank. So the fact that you're close to break even is actually a good thing, if I may. Now, to give you a bit more perspective on this is if you go to the next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. Okay, perfect, thank you. The red bar is the surplus that's in your financial statements. The dark blue bar is this adjusted surplus where I take out the amortization and I deduct the capital. And once again, what you will find is this. Over the last 10 years or so, there were 2 years where you operated at a deficit. By and large, though, your operations, you've managed to balance your revenues and your expenses appropriately. What you will find is there's a significant spike in 2020. That, I'll be very honest with you, is a pandemic impact. And so this is something that I have seen in other library systems. And it's interesting, and I think I may have mentioned this to you last year or 2 years ago. In communities like Haliburton, in places like Seattle and Perry Sound District, what the pandemic really demonstrated is in these more rural, smaller communities, the importance of the libraries, because what you then become is you become a hub for the delivery of services. And I know it may sound weird unless you've experienced it, but in some of these places, people had to go to the library to get internet service, right? And so what it then becomes one of is it demonstrates the importance of having this type of infrastructure inside your community. And when you think about the county, for example, you have multiple locations for a reason, right? I always talk, my hometown is Sudbury. City of Sudbury has 165,000 people. They have 13 different water systems.
Wow.
Because of geography. You go to Mississauga, there's one, right? So it's interesting when you get into the rural nature of it. Now, what you'll find once again is, and the reason I put this up is that red bar is what's in your financial statement. It's counterintuitive once again for your auditor to say this, but I wouldn't put a lot of faith in what the surplus is in your financial statements. You need to do this type of adjustment because what you'll find is that in 23 and 24, for example, your financial statements were showing larger surpluses. The reality is you broke even. Okay, so next slide, please. So that is the financial statements, and admittedly, they're not complex financial statements. So that's the Coles Notes version, if you will. One of the things that we've also done and what we wanted to provide from a more of a value add perspective is to give you a bit of benchmarking. So the province of Ontario has a site where there is a whole bunch of data with respect to library systems in Ontario. It's a very good site. Your staff have to complete a survey on an annual basis. So we use that for comparator purposes. Now, what we've done is we've selected a number of library systems predominantly based on number of households. And so what you will find is Haliburton County is one of the smaller counties in terms of households in the province of Ontario. There's about 21,000. I don't think it makes sense to compare you to something like Simcoe County or Middlesex County or Essex County because they're just so much larger. So one of the things that we've done is we've included Haldimand County and Lennox and Addington County because from a household served perspective, they're somewhat close to you. But we've also gone into what we call lower tier municipalities because in a number of cases, libraries aren't delivered at the county, they're delivered at the lower tier. So you'll see the comparators there. And what we've done is we've just pulled the statistics. So household served, population served, the number of active card holders, service points and branches. And what this gets down to is your footprint. And what you will find is areas that are more urbanized, there's one library building, one library service point. When you get to Haliburton County, there's 8. And so what you'll find is this translates into your operations because inherently things become more expensive because instead of running one branch, you're running 11 or you're running 8. Instead of operating 40 hours a week, you're staffing 140 hours because you have multiple sites. Okay. So it's important to measure this. So this is the population of the comparators. I do want to tell the board we pick these. And the reason why I say that is because figures never lie, but liars always figure. Depending on which libraries I pick, I can make you look like the best run or the worst one library. So we pick these ourselves. Your staff did not influence the choice. So there is no bias coming forward where Andrea said, I know these ones are dogs. Throw them. I don't think she talks that way. So maybe she does. Please.
I do have one question, and I know that you've pulled these stats, but the number of households is larger than population for Haliburton, but in every other case, it's a half or a third. What's that all about?
You're more seasonal.
Pardon me?
You're more seasonal.
Cottages.
So it's more households than population.
Yeah, because you're more seasonal, those residents don't count
All right.
Don't
Okay.
count where?
in the population. You have the house, but not the population. So if you think,
Library.
if you pull up your Statistics Canada,
Okay.
what they have is they have two measures of households, total households and total households occupied on a year-round basis, and those numbers are different. So what you will find is that in seasonal communities, much like Haliburton, if you go north to Parry Sound, if you go into Huntsville and Muskokas, for example, you will have this disconnect where you actually have more houses than people.
Except for Huntsville.
So,
Yeah, and maybe that's a bad example. But
Yeah.
so does that not skew the statistics?
it will, and so I will explain that as we move. Okay, but it is a valid point. What it does reflect, though, is the seasonality of your municipality.
Mm.
And if I were to pull them for the Parry Sound District, I didn't because the sizing is smaller, but you'll find the same thing. You know, and I'll give you the perfect example. If you're familiar with Parry Sound, their hospital is the fourth largest hospital in northeastern Ontario, despite the fact that Parry Sound has an official population level of 7,500 people. And the reason for that is because in the summer, it goes to 200,000. The problem is it gets skewed, to your point. It's the disconnect from a seasonal perspective. When we used to do Minden Hills, the audit for Minden Hills, we would do the same thing when we do their benchmarking because their population and households are off. So if you move to the next slide, please. There are behind this slide a number of graphs that give you the individual metrics. But what we wanted to do is on one page, give you a bit of a report card. Okay. So what you will find is that there's a number of indicators that we've selected, and we typically use these when we benchmark libraries. And once again, these are our indicators. They're not the indicators from your staff. So the first thing that we look at is we look at what we call penetration. And this is the degree to which you have a population served and residents served, and the extent to which you've actually penetrated those by having active card holders. And what you will find is that on a per capita basis, your library service has the highest rate of active card holders per 1,000 residents served. So what that means is from a penetration perspective, you've actually done the best job of the comparators of getting people interested in your library system.
But isn't, like, the numerator would be permanent and seasonal residents,
The denominator.
the denominator,
And
but the card holders.
stays the same. The cardholders is the numerator.
Okay,
So what you will find is that because you have more households than residents, while you've done a good job on a per capita basis, you actually have the second lowest performance on a per household basis. Okay, and this is where that balance or imbalance between residents and households
right,
skews your stats.
right.
Right? So the challenge that you have is you have some households that count in your stats that have no people.
Right. So you've got active card holders who are both permanent and seasonal, but the residents are only permanent
It's my understanding.
because they're from the census.
They're from the census.
Right. So that number it's hard. Is it hard to justify that number making any sense?
What I would suggest to you is you're somewhere in between.
Okay.
But the short answer is if you were 14th on both,
Mhm.
then I would suggest you have a problem.
Cease having his hand up.
Okay.
Cease, Joanna, you're on mute.
Get unmuted first before I can do anything. Yeah, I have a tendency to agree with Adele because, again, we're seasonal, but we're not. You would have the traditional seasonal people who might go forth. What we have here is we have semi-retired people with prime residences outside of Haliburton County, which is the same problem we talked about this morning, and that was that our population, although technically is registered as their home in Toronto because they want to do that. Otherwise, if they ever sold anything, the capital gains would be on their understanding. So they got to keep their prime residence in Toronto or Ottawa or wherever they're coming from. But they are a great percentage of the time. And so everybody else does. And so consequently, our numbers are going to be high because we have technically more real users, even though the government doesn't accept them as people. We certainly do. And so, that's kind of the way it works. So I'm not sure how to do that because as soon as you start looking at a lot of times when you're looking at the way things are financed and the way money is dished out to places, if it's not done by households, it's done by permanent population. And unfortunately, that doesn't do anything for us.
If you step out of the library system and you go into the municipal system, programs like federal gas tax, like the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, it's based on population. And so the challenge that you have, he's indicated, is if they don't show up in your stat scan stuff because they say they're living someplace else, you don't get credit for them, despite the fact they're driving your roads, they're using your library. What I would suggest to you, and to your point once again, I would think you fall somewhere in between these 2 points. And the point of this analysis is when you think about it, you're on the extreme on both ends, which means you're in the middle. If you were on low on both sides, then what I would suggest to you is, regardless of how you measure it, you have a penetration issue, and you clearly don't.
Okay.
I would suggest, in comparison to your peers, you're probably middle to upper.
Okay.
So, but admittedly, and you've indicated it as well, there's a skewing because of seasonality.
Yes.
Right. And maybe what would be interesting next year is to put a second population in and say, we're not going to look at size, but we're going to look at people who have more houses than people and run that comparison, because that may be a more relevant peer group. So we can pick that up. In terms of other things from an activity perspective and an indicator perspective, the third metric is your circulation by active cardholders. So this is to say, we've got X number of cardholders. How much of our collected materials are they actually using? And this includes both physical copies and electronic formats as well. There are 15 comparators in this group. So if you're 7 and above, you're in the top 50%. If you're 8 and below, you're in the bottom 50%. You've got the 6th highest rate. So what you can see is that you're above average, and at 30 circulation items per active cardholder per year, you're 6th highest in the comparator group. So what that means is, on average, your active cardholders will use your library at least as much, if not more, than the average of the comparators. When you look at library transactions, this is a different measure as well, but what you'll find is you are a bit lower on that perspective, and what that then comes down to is a question of frequency. How often are they coming in? And so what you'll find is this potentially could be skewed, because if I'm coming in every day and I'm churning through, I'll have 5 transactions per week, versus if I grab something and I use it for a week, I've got parts to bite me, because if I'm a seasonal resident living 20 miles outside of town, I may not be coming to the library every day. If I'm in Mississauga and it's across the street, I'm going to it every day. What's interesting is the number of visits. So the statistics that track delineate between in-person visits and electronic visits. And what you will find is that you do a very good job from an electronic visit perspective. From an in-person perspective, you're towards the lower end of the range. And what I would suggest is this likely reflects 2 things. One is, it's once again your geography. where you think about it, if I'm an active card holder and I'm sitting in a cottage someplace, I may not necessarily come to the library per se, but I may use your website instead to access services, programs, what have you. I think the second thing that it likely reflects, and this is just my own personal observation, is probably how good of a job that you do on these electronic access points, right? The best way to have very low internet and electronic access is to have a very bad internet site, right? It's just like, forget it, I'm done, right? So this is where I think it actually, the geography starts to skew this a little bit, but I would give credit where credit's due. And I can say this because I actually stalked your website in advance of this meeting, and I think you guys have done a good job. What I find is really interesting is the last three metrics.
Sorry, could I just ask a
Please.
question about the in-person visits? Where does the total number of in-person visits come from?
It's the statistics that are reported by the libraries to the minister.
And so, I think we touched on this last year, as well. So we have to fill out something called the annual service survey of public libraries.
So is that taking
And-
1 week?
So this is from typical week, and we do typical week in the fall. And we are much, much, much busier in the summer, say from May to
That's my question.
September.
Yeah.
So the way we're represented in these statistics, because we're taking our typical week from the fall, it doesn't adequately reflect how busy we are throughout the year. It's a snapshot from a less busy time of year, whereas the website traffic, it's represents the whole
So
year.
it really isn't a typical
It's
week.
not, yeah.
Okay.
One of the, sorry, just if I may, one of the things that we want to make sure whenever we do this type of benchmarking is that we have a single source of information.
Yes.
And so I can appreciate the data may not necessarily be perfect or representative, but what it is it is consistent,
Yes.
which is also why we use Statistics Canada information, because then we know it's a common thing. In the conversation we had at county this morning was the whole aspect of households versus population, and the fact that there are people as, and sorry, I hope you don't mind if I use his first name, that CEAS has identified. There are people that are living in this community that according to the federal government don't.
Right. Okay.
Right, so, and it is a challenge, but at the end of the day, we work with what we do.
Right.
I just wanted to comment with your statement about in-person visits. It sounds like there's a nice balance to our horn here. Service delivery in person versus the internet service. Is that a reasonable comment to make then?
I would suggest yes, but I'll caveat that with a couple of things. The statistics don't show that. And once again, when you mention typical week measured in the fall versus July, I get that conversation. So the issue is much like the active card holders per resident served, the actual number is probably higher than what the stats show, right? Anecdotally, I just know your library is busy.
Yeah.
And I'll be very honest with you, every time I come here when I need to work, I go to your library. So if I'm not here because I've never been here before, I'm in Minden. And so, anecdotally, it just looked busy, but that's just me. And I've never been here in July.
And just to speak to the geography piece, I look at the comparator of Huntsville, for example, and I know Huntsville quite well because I live in North, and it's a great little city. It's very small. You can do a whole tour in a couple of hours. And I'm delighted to see that they have so many in-person visits. That's absolutely right. And as you say, when you can go every day and just touch base, and exchange your book, it's great. We've got 21,000 permanent residents, over 4,000 square kilometers. So some of our branches are only open a couple of times a week, and you better believe someone is only going to go once in that week, stock up with everything they need, get online, put in all of their applications, fill their taxes, do all their thing, download their other thing, pick up their DVD. We're their one-stop shop, and they come in once a week. And because we're only open one other day, and they've come from 40 kilometers away.
And I would suggest that's why you have big circulation and low transactions.
Right. Yeah.
So I was looking at my watch, and the reason why I was looking at my watch is I wanted to see what day it was today. Because we have a mandatory retirement age at KPMG. So I had 5 years, 4 months, and 18 days left. I know that for a fact. And the reason why I raised this. The reason why I raised this is because my partner is talking about retirement and I'm talking about retirement. And we've decided it would be a very good idea for our relationship for me to get the hell out of the house when I'm retired. Because otherwise I'll just follow her around and follow her incessantly. So the conversation is, what am I going to do with my days? So I could go to, I always tell the story at council about the 4 people at Tim Hortons complaining about their taxes, but I don't want to do that. And I will tell you this right now, there is a library 5 minutes from my house. Guess what I'm doing when I'm getting home? I'm going to go to the library, I'm going to grab a book, I'm going to take a coffee, I'm going to park myself, and I'm going to read. And that is officially on my 5 years, 4 months, and 19 days of phase 2. So, it's to your point, it's the utilization, right? And once again, getting back to the comparators, the last 3 metrics I found were particularly interesting because these are financial. So what you will find is you have a higher level of weekly hours of operation than your peer group because you have more branches.
Yeah.
And so what that means is pound for pound, you operate more because you operate 8 branches instead of 1, 8 branches instead of 1. So on an absolute basis, your numbers have to be higher just because you're 8 times the footprint. What's interesting though is when you harmonize based on hours of operation, so you adjust for that size differential, what you will find is that from a local funding perspective, the county contribution to the library, you actually have the 12th lowest of the 15. So pound for pound, operating hour for operating hour, you cost your taxpayers less. In terms of the personnel cost per weekly hours of operations, the staffing costs, you're actually 13th lowest out of the 15. And this is where economies of scale can help you because you take your CEO and you spread that cost over 141 hours as opposed to 40 hours. And when you look at your total operating costs, which once again get impacted somewhat by economies of scale because you take our audit fees and you spread them across the branch, but you also have 8 insurance bills, 8 hydro bills, 8 snow plowing contracts and the like, so it drives it up. You're actually the 11th lowest out of 15. So when you look at it from a financial perspective, what I would suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, empirically, the statistics would say you get good bang for your buck. You are a very low-cost provider when it comes to operating costs per hour. You are a very low cost to your residents when you look at how much taxpayer support you have per hour of operation. You do this despite the fact that you've got very high utilization of your website, you've got very high circulation from your active cardholders, and once you harmonize for the in-between, you've got good penetration. And I'm not trying to be flippant when I use this term, but what I would suggest the benchmarking shows you is you get good bang for your buck. So when you, and I don't need you to flip the slides, but if you have the deck, when you go towards the back, you will see these statistics broken down by individual comparators. So the comment that I would make is I find it helpful sometimes to see where you are because you could be below average, but in a lot of cases, you're just below average. What you'll find is that in some cases, there's groupings that you have and how you fit in. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, you can get some perspective looking at that just to give your sense some self. But what I would also say is from a comparative analysis perspective, from a trend perspective, based on what we've talked about financially, there's nothing that I would suggest just from an informed observer perspective that would cause me what the Italians call acido if I was a board member. There's nothing that I would suggest demonstrates a pressing concern from a library perspective in terms of sustainability, financial performance, or your actual operating performance. I think the benchmarking demonstrates well. I appreciate it's skewed by that seasonality and there's nothing you can do about it. I also appreciate that based on your typical week, your numbers may be low, but your numbers aren't bad now. And so what that means is they're probably better than what they indicate and your numbers are good. What I would like to do, to your point, is next year we'll throw in some of those ones where the people in the households don't make sense. And then you'll see a second, like this takes me 20 minutes. So So we'll provide that type of analysis next year, and we'll see what the numbers look like.
The other metric that I think would be really interesting to see is a comparator of bang for your buck and financial efficiency to average income level. And we discussed average income level, and it's this morning, and it is a complicated figure for a county like Haliburton, because we do have a lot of retired folk, and we've got a lot of folk earning income elsewhere and bringing it to the cottage. So it's not perfect. But as a general comparator, for this group sitting around the table, and I very much include the friends, the biggest bang for our buck is what we can bring to the people who have to rely on these services for social time and access to amenities and internet and warmth in the wintertime and a whole series of things. And in my mind, income level is a very imperfect but interesting proxy indicator for level of need.
I did it so north of here, because so in full disclosure, I'm from Sudbury. Please don't hold that against me. They have something called the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities. They have an annual conference every year, and last year I got asked to speak. And so I gave a presentation on the bankruptcy of Orange County in 1991. And I always have wanted to give a presentation on the bankruptcy of Orange County in 1991. At the time, it was the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history. $1.8 billion was at play. And because it was so large, it got studied to death. And there's an organization called the California Institute of Public Policy that wrote a remarkable forensic debrief on Orange County, and it took away lessons learned. And one of the lessons learned, to your point, was the people that rely on municipal services the most are the ones who can afford it the least. Okay, I have been very fortunate in my life. I've had good support from my parents. I came out of university. It wasn't exactly the best time in 91, but I got a really good job. I have never been on a municipal bus. And the reason I've never been on a municipal bus is because I've been able to afford a car. My son has never had to go to a municipal daycare because I was fortunate enough that my wife at the time could stay home and take care of him. We don't go to the municipal beaches because I have a house on the lake. I am atypical. But when you think about the people who rely on municipal services, to your point, they're the ones that are on fixed incomes, limited incomes, low incomes. They're the ones who need it the most. And what the Orange County example always was be very careful when you cut municipal services, because guys like me don't care. And when it comes to affordability, you know what? Yeah, my taxes are high, but I kind of understand why. My taxes go up 4%. I could care less. And the comment I made today at council was my cell phone bill is higher than the average tax bill in Haliburton County at the upper tier. I can say that. You know, the only people who say money doesn't matter are the people with money. And I'm not Dr. Rich, but I do okay. Right? So to your point, you have to be very careful when you're looking at adjusting municipal services, because the guys that are worth $1 gajillion, they could care less. And the truth is, they're probably not coming to your library to begin with. Where you also see this, and I will apologize for the diversion here, but go to your hospital emergency room on a cold night. Because my mother, unfortunately, we're dealing with some end-of-life issues with her, and I showed up when it was -30. The emergency room at my hospital is a homeless shelter, and it's where people go to stay warm. And so I get all of that, but you need to understand that is an operational tempo that is different than a normal hospital. And from a library perspective, if they're coming here to get warm, that is different than if they're coming here to read a book. And so society is changing. And I think what you're finding is between everything that's happening in the economy, those things are becoming more and more pronounced. So it's important because your system, your libraries are going to evolve over time. Okay. So that is effectively your financial statements and some of the benchmarking and me standing on a box and telling you what kind of a job you're doing. So I would like to thank you once again for allowing us the opportunity to be here today. I'm very glad that I was able to do this.
Yeah.
It's very nice to meet
Feels
you.
great.
I hope it's okay for me to say this, but one of the things I've been thinking about is the place of libraries. And I mentioned this to your staff today. One of the things that I think is the next big thing is 3D printing, because I think what it is it's something that people will enjoy. And it's also something that will drive people to the library. I would like to provide a donation to buy a 3D printer and 6 months of supplies to the library. Now, the issue that I have is I don't have a check because I need it to be deductible from a charitable perspective. And I don't know if that's you or the county. But I do want to let you know that I will be reaching out to Andrea to make a donation. I think libraries are so important to our communities. I don't pay tax in Haliburton. So if I was paying tax, I would say, well, you got my taxes, but you don't. So I'd like to do this as a bit of a gesture.
A little more than a bit of a gesture.
That's incredibly kind and gracious and a testament to how much you believe in this library.
Pretty much. Well, and in fairness, I'm saying the same thing in North Bay. I used to support hospitals.
Thank you.
That requires a definitely big thank you.
You're most welcome.
Any other questions or general comments? It's a lot of great data, and I remember in years past mining it. It's so good to have the presentations because we can go back and mine it as we want to remember the points. Yeah.
I did want to thank Oscar for his candid comments and also the very approachable, understandable analysis and delivery.
I may have done this one. You're most welcome.
But I'm an accountant, so it could be otherwise.
I would,
My brother's.
before the pandemic, I used to drive 60 to 70,000 kilometers a year. And I have clients, I go from Pembroke and Deep River out to Wawa, north to the James Bay coast, and south to Windsor. And so I would travel a lot. I would spend more time in other KPMG offices than I did in my own. With the pandemic, my car thinks I've broken up with it because I've owned it for 3 years and I have 58,000 kilometers. And that is less than a year of driving. I will say how much I enjoy being in the field with clients. I actually messaged one of my partners today about how much fun this is. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity. I'm not sure I could do this all the time because it is about 9 hours in a car for me at a busy time of year. It just happened to align well with the county. If next year the county council presentation and the library presentation are the same day, if you'll have me, I'm happy to come back. And we can print out coffee cups or whatever.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Oscar.
Thank
You're doing a
you very
terrific
much.
job.
So that he can finally wrap up his file, could I please have a mover and a seconder to accept the auditor's presentation and the draft financial statements as presented?
Also move.
Adele and Paul, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And you're not heading back home tonight, I hope. Are you?
I have 2 eye police tomorrow that I have to get back. So the nice part about this is I will be driving in daily.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, I will take my.
Yes, please,
So
yeah.
It was very nice to meet you.
Great to
Thank
see
you very much. I've got your statements. I need the rep letter and I will be in touch with you. If you don't have them tomorrow, you should have them on Friday.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, journey.
Where are you driving back to?
Sudbury.
Oh,
So I go across to Bracebridge and then I go across to the 400 south of Paris. I come up. To drive the part. So what I've discovered is that when I'm getting older, I don't have the stamina I used to for driving, and I also don't have the eyesight. Once I get to Highway 400 by Perry Sound, it's actually not bad. It's that road in between.
Yeah, all those wine, yeah.
Yeah, and so, and I will confess, I was looking for turkeys on the way here. I had a staff member hit a turkey. And I'm like, turkeys don't fly. And then what I discovered is turkeys fly.
Yeah.
Because if you remember WKRP in Cincinnati,
Yes.
as God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. I always, based on that, I thought turkeys didn't fly, but they do apparently. So, okay.
And in this village, it's the deer.
Yeah, well, better than the moose.
And on the road north, it's the deer too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Safe travel.
I have everything. I didn't forget anything. Okay.
Thanks.
I'm so glad again that the friends would hear that.
It's really interesting.
Good,
You did a wonderful job.
Yeah, yeah. And our brilliant segue to welcome the Friends of the Library to our board meeting, because you are going to give us a little presentation on what you do this. Yeah, great. So
And-
we've got Gwen and Penny and
And I'm the president of the Friends currently, just from the new year, and Penny is our vice president, and Pat has been a director for
a long time.
time. Yes, so, and thank you very much for the invitation, because this is the first time I'm aware of, or at least as long as I've been on the board, that we've actually had any meeting with the library board. And I had a little chat with Adele at a social event and Jackie, and said this would be really great if we could just get together and you can find out what we're all about. I might have some things in my presentation that you weren't aware of. So anyway, we're going to start with who we are. And we're Friends of the Haliburton County Public Library, and it was established in 2003. And the first directors, I thought people might be interested in knowing, because it might be names familiar: Michael Fay, Ellie Malcolmson, who had been our president for quite some time, Robert McIver, June Stewart, and Eileen and Bruce. And how we look at the Friends is that we are a support group for the library. And at the heart of everything we do is our shared love of libraries. And we believe that the Haliburton County Public Library is an indispensable community institution. And we strive to ensure that our public library system is the best it can be for the people of Haliburton County. We currently have 8 directors. Our constitution allows up to 12. So we are actively looking. A lot of people love to help, but sometimes when you mention directors, a veil comes over their face, but we are actively looking. And just for interest's sake, we know that Penny is the vice president. Gail Gillespie is our secretary, and Gail is just recently on the board also, so we're very thankful to have Gail. Clara Euler has come back as treasurer. She had left the board for a bit, but we did some arm twisting and she's back as treasurer. Pat is one of the directors. Lori Brandon, Janet Troll, and Sue Sisson are the other 3 directors. So we've got a great group, but it'd be nice to expand it just a little bit. And we meet the second Monday of every month, with the exception of July and August. And we have nonprofit organization insurance, which is interesting because for how long have we had this? 2 years? We had no idea that we should have insurance. So now we have really good insurance. General liability, directors, officers, and crime coverage.
Crime novel coverage.
Crime
novel.
That's interesting. Yeah. And we have just recently adopted a code of conduct, which we thought we'd never have to use, but in fact we did have one situation. So it's now, we just in our past meeting on Monday, have passed the code of conduct, and hopefully we'll never have to use it, but we have it now so that if it's there, if need be. So the annual Friends membership fee is $5, and we currently have 72 paid up members. And there's been talk about why, should we increase the amount? But really, I think the $5 is an okay amount, because we really just need that contact information too. Yeah. And we've kind of invested. Other Friends, and some have a higher membership rate, and others have no membership rate. We're kind of just there in the middle, like the auditor was saying with other things. So, what we do, we raise funds to support programs and services not funded by the Haliburton County Public Library's operating budget. And we endlessly sort books. Those donated and library discards. We advocate for, and we also advocate for the library by promoting community awareness of the role of the library in the county. And how we do it is by raising funds is by book sales. And we raise funds through 4 mega book sales a year, 2 at the Dysart branch and 2 at the Minden Hills branch. And Minden will have a sale coming up this Saturday.
And Minden has the book nook as well.
Yep, it's coming. Yes. So Dysart has a dedicated Friends bookshelf at the back of the library. There's also a book cart there. There's a little donation box. And Minden Hills has the book nook, and that's open every Tuesday for 4 hours. Do you have an extended summer time for the book
No,
nook?
no, it's still tend to,
Just that
it's the hours change, like it's every, first and third in the winter, and then
Yeah.
from May 24th to October, it's every,
Yeah,
which is.
and because it's the book nook people, like you have a bigger job organizing volunteers than we have here. It's much easier here at the Dysart Library. So the other 6 branches have more limited space. Some will have maybe a shelving unit, others just maybe one little shelf, but they all have a space. And Pat and I did a tour of those libraries just last weekend because we wanted to put up signs for Love Your Library and collected $174 from, and that was over a period of time because we hadn't collected for some time, but that was quite amazing from that branch. And all of our book sales are by donation. And we find that people are very generous. Sometimes people can only afford, or might maybe come in with like 25 cents, kids, and they want books, and we fill up a bag for them. And then somebody else, will buy one thing and give us $20. So it all balances out very nicely. So the revenue from the 2025 book sales was $7,720.65. And that's nickel and diming it for the most part.
Wow.
So, yes. So we were very, very excited when we kind of put those numbers together. Yeah, impressive. That's a lot of rolling of coins if you take the funds to the secretary, treasurer, sorry. We also have Friends Cafe, and this event is held, used to be twice a year, but now it's just held once a year in the spring, held at the Minden Hills branch, featuring a local author or another guest of interest. Admission to that is by donation. And on the 27th of April, Faye Martin, in conversation with Janet Troll, discussed her book, Dementia Widow. And it was what Faye's husband was.
It was very.
So, I mean, it was, anyway. So he, Michael was there, was one of the, it was because of Michael, things got going, establishing those groups. Yeah. So past guests have included Bernie Nichols, who was just really, really funny. We had a great time with him. And Douglas Tyndall and Guy Scott, who recently passed. And he did a presentation on rural schoolhouses. Good. Our major fundraiser is in the fall, and it features an author of note. Past speakers have included Carol Off, Linwood Barclay, Terry Follis, Maureen Jennings, Francis Atani, and Arch Thompson, just to mention a few. Lyndon McIntyre was last year's guest speaker, and that had been his second time with us.
And he was excited to be back.
Yes, it was. And we raised $8,737.60. That's after expenses. Definitely. And we sold 136 tickets. And the success of this event was due to a number of factors. We had the support of local media, local merchants, silent auction donators, generous sponsors, and our dedicated Friends volunteers. And Mike and Cheryl Waller, managers of the Haliburton Royal Canadian Legion, could not have been more helpful. Ensuring that the Legion, and it ensured that the Legion was the perfect venue for this event. Our 2026 fundraiser, which will be Sunday, November the 1st, will feature Carol Off.
Again.
She is returning for a second time, and she's presenting her soon-to-be released book, True Patriot Love, Reporting from the Front Lines of Canadian Sovereignty. So that will be really timely. And that will be our third time using the Legion, because before we'd use the pine stone, and then when that wasn't very reliable, Legion stepped up, and just amazing cooperation. So where the money goes that we have collected, just some examples are the children's early literacy computers, a sort of children's program supplies, book club sets and bags, evergreen books, juvenile nonfiction, special collections, mental health books, and Greenberry books in memory of Shirley. We have been one of our directors. Ebooks, Envoy Reader, ukuleles, radon detectors, which has been really important. And just at our last meeting, Andrew was saying that we should probably have a couple of more in stock. So we're very happy to be funding that. Ozobots, so for those who don't have little grandchildren or whatever, they're robots designed to introduce coding to little people. And Reptile Show, which is coming back, I do believe. Or is
Turtles this time.
Oh, turtles, okay. Yes. And then just recent purchases by the library were easels and beanbag chairs. And that's just some of the stuff. We could go on forever, but it's always fun at our meetings when we say to Andrea, what do you need? And we've got money, so we can buy stuff. Yeah. So I just want to talk a wee bit about how we advocate for the library. Probably noticed signs all around the county. Love Your Library campaign, and we have designated May for this lovely, it is lovely, it's also Love Your Library Month. Businesses in the county were approached regarding displaying a sign, either 12-inch by 16-inch in their window, just for the month. People want to keep one longer, that's fine, but having owned a business, I know that I never like stuff in the windows because you want to have things kind of clear. So we just asked people to do it for a month, and we received overwhelming support. It just was like, bring it on. Like it was, yeah, the support in the community is amazing. We've got the big banner that's attached to the railing of the Echo. So we got permission from the Echo, and they would love to have it there. Emily Stonehouse is going, there will be some features in the newspaper in the next little bit regarding libraries. And we have also got the outdoor signs, which are 18 inches by 24 inches. That's the same sign as the political signs. And they're scattered throughout the community. And it's just really fun to drive along and see them.
Paul has two.
Yes. And Paul was the first person to actually buy signs. It was really nice. And Kathy Sweeney of County Sign has been just a generous supporter of this endeavor, but of the Friends Forever. We got everything at cost, or maybe not even. But she doesn't have time to do other things, and so she just said, if I can do this for the library, it just makes her very happy. So it makes us very happy also. So we have that campaign. Pat is now representing the Friends of the Library on the library board, or Friend of the Library Board's advocacy committee. So we're very happy about that. We'll also be promoting the library and the Friends at Bookapalooza, and that's a festival for book lovers in June the 20th, and it will be our 5th year of attending that event in Minden. So our focus for 2026 is unrelenting advocacy for the Haliburton County Public Library, with a focus on the 6 smaller branches, which are essential to the communities they serve. And so that's the end of that presentation, but I just wanted to comment, we did receive a check from Canoe. And that was, I believe, the second time. I don't know whether it was our third time that we received bingo funds, but I just wanted to read a little bit why we received them. And this was from Roxanne Casey, the manager at Canoe. She said, I would like to thank you for the important work that Friends do to support literacy and education in our community. The dedication of local non-for-profit groups like yours helps make Haliburton County a stronger, more compassionate, and more vibrant place to live. And so what I thought was really lovely, she ends this with, we hope this contribution will help support the valuable programs and services you provide for the people of Haliburton County. Community radio exists because of community, and we are proud to partner with organizations like yours that are working every day to improve the lives of others. Thank you for this positive impact.
Lovely.
Okay. So that's what we're all about, and if you have any questions for us, but at this time, but
How much they give?
this time it was 1,000.
Wow.
I mean, but it's not, and the
Yeah,
first
it's a
time was
lot.
10.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's mind boggling, just, but when you look on the website, the Canoe website, and you see like just the different organizations that are being supported, it's wonderful. And I'm too tense to play bingo, so I've never really. But you know, it's just amazing that how bingo has brought little groups together, especially in the summertime. You know, cottagers just love it, and people are playing from all over the place now, not just counties. And I just would like to, for people that would be just put it out. So our annual general meeting is coming up on June the 6th. Eight, sorry, yes, so we don't want to cover. And we put, Clara Euler puts a lovely report together just for people like looking at things rather than a lot of numbers. And one side is what we have bought, just examples of what we have bought for the library in 25. And the side is how we actually came up with the funds to buy these things. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then these will be handed out at our annual general meeting, but it's just, and then we post them in the library for the rest of the year.
Thank you.
It's a great idea.
I just saw the bookmark winners too. Aren't they?
Oh, and the
wonderful.
bookmarks, yeah, they're so cute.
Yeah.
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 Any
And
questions for Gwen, any or anyone from the Friends?
I would like to share my heartfelt thanks because the 3 of you and the rest of the Friends board members and the volunteers who work behind the scenes in the book nook, you work so hard, and tirelessly is really the word. You're working so hard all the time, and you do so much work and get money from all different sources in our community, and then we can make these great things available in our libraries for our community members. Your support means so much to me and to the library team and to the community. So I try to say it really often, but I'll say it now in this. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
we have a lovely library system work and staff are so wonderful. So
I
it's a
love
joy for us.
the image of a child coming with 25 cents and walking away with a whole pile of books that they can keep. I know,
We never turn anybody away. If they don't have money, they're.
And it's interesting, like the fun at those mega book sales too, because you can just, you know, right away the people you can really have fun with. So, we had, I just wanted to tell you very quickly about one thing. Somebody had donated this 2-set thing of, it was in a box, and I think it was a dictionary maybe, but the print was so tiny, you know, we thought, who would ever use this? But we convinced, Gail Gillespie and I convinced this one fellow that he had to take it. Like, I don't even know how it compared it. But there was we had so much fun with you, and I didn't know that you were the library board. But there was a little drawer at the top of this box.
Oh, yeah.
Which actually contained so that was why.
Instead of one of Shakespeare's works or said.
But it was, and we said he couldn't redonate it, like if what you.
Well, thanks again. Great to get the update on what you're doing. And it's the first time I've heard the full story as well. I've known parts, but it's the first time that I've heard the whole thing. So thank you.
Well, thanks for inviting. Was our word.
May I have a mover and seconder to accept the Friends of Haliburton County Public Library's presentation for information? Adele and Lisa.
Oh, you have a sticker.
Pardon me?
I need a sticker.
Oh, good. You want more
Yes,
than one?
who doesn't?
Yeah.
All libraries.
All in favor?
Great, thank you. That's carried.
Yeah. And just before we circulate the stickers, could I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Oh, no, wait, we've got municipal roundtable, don't we? Anything from our local municipal, can I put you on the spot, Lisa? Do you have any updates on the Minden branch on the repairs there?
I believe they're ongoing. I know they're still working on the roof, which isn't necessarily just over the library portion, but it does have some effect on the structure. Yeah, as far as I know, everything's still ongoing unless somebody knows differently than I, which could be Paul, because he seems to keep his finger on the pulse of that for me.
No, they're onto the library part of the roof now.
Yesterday, they're still working.
Yeah.
Good.
Any other updates from our municipal counterparts?
No, very not.
Okay, well, thanks very much.
I'll just leave some there to be spread around.
Great,
Thank you, Gwen.
So then, may I have a mover and seconder to adjourn? Jackie and anyone and Adele. Okay. All in favor? That is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Paul, thank you for your extra donation when he wants the signs.
It's one. And we look forward to future collaboration.